Okay, well, thank you for joining us here inside our private Facebook group for the IAFF. We've been spending the last 2 months now talking about firefighter resilience. My name is Lisa Desley, and I partnered with the IAFF to really launch a nutrition program specifically for firefighters. And amid everything that we're experiencing now, we saw a great opportunity to be a little bit more broad with our discussion, bringing in fitness, talking about resilience and wellness and behavioral health. And I'm really excited about today's guest that I get to interview. Sue Shepard with Indianapolis Fire Department is joining me. Sue, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Thanks again for joining us. You've been really involved in the group a lot already. So thank you for that. And I'm just really, I'm looking forward to our discussion, learning more about you and kind of your passion for firefighter health and resilience, and then also your 20-year career in the fire service. So can you tell us a little bit about you and your journey up until this point?
Sure. First of all, thank you for having me on. And the format that you do these interviews in is outstanding. I haven't watched all of them yet, but I think you're providing really great resources and information for firefighters in a much needed time.
Oh, thank you.
So my background, 20 years, gosh, that went by fast. My background is actually in exercise science and personal training. I went to Purdue University, got my degree in exercise science back in '86, and went into the field of personal training. And one day, years later, I had a really life-changing conversation with a firefighter. We were on step mills next to each other, and he asked me this question that really ended up changing my life. He said, "Sue, do you think you can make a career out of personal training? Will you be financially secure, have a pension, all of that?" And I said, "No, I can't." He said, "Well, have you ever considered the fire service?" And I said, "Well, I'm fascinated by it. I respect firefighters, but I wouldn't know how to go about even trying out." So he kind of mentored me with that. And it truly did change my life. I found a path to go on that would not only give me career fulfillment, but offer me, some of that security that he was talking about. So he changed my life.
Well, that's awesome. That's so awesome. So you brought into it this passion for fitness, and what did you discover once you kind of joined the ranks?
Well, full disclosure, I discovered that I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought that I was coming in with, all of this knowledge and being really fit, even though I was at the upper end of the age bracket for being hired. I thought, I'm never going to get hurt. I'm not going to be one of those, kind of broken down firefighters. And I got humbled pretty quickly. And so that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me, but I was recognized by some of the people on the job as having a background in fitness, so they wanted to put me in a pure fitness trainer class. I was in the first one Indianapolis hosted, and that was in 2003. And from that point on, I've been utilized along with other pure fitness trainers to help do recruit physical training in the mornings, to train incumbent firefighters, to mentor CPAT, to mentor work performance evaluation. So you kind of wear many hats when you're a pure fitness trainer. But I mean, it was right in my wheelhouse. I couldn't have asked for a better situation. I had this dream career now and some security, and I get to bring my old career into the new one. So it was win-win.
That's so awesome. I imagine since that kind of that assignment in you said 2003?
I hired on the job in 2000.
Okay. But I imagine in the last 20 years, and specifically probably in the last 17, you've seen an evolution of this conversation around fitness, also nested inside this bigger conversation around health. How has that changed over the years?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Lisa. I would say, even in my career time, I've seen a shift in the paradigm about the approach to what it means to be fit and well. We didn't even really talk about wellness before. It was just, are you strong enough to do the job? And I think we were doing a disservice to our members. And kind of ignoring the big picture of firefighter wellness. And so, and even in my own approach to it, I think I was kind of missing the mark. So, I admit that mistake, and looking back on it, I think that it didn't allow me the opportunity to help people as much as I am now, and my team is, because we were just kind of narrowly focused. So, now we have this amazing comprehensive approach where we're looking at behavioral health. It's always been in the Wellness Fitness Initiative, but I think that was kind of the piece that was put aside a little bit too much. And now it is a big part of the pie, along with, physical fitness and medical wellness and all of that. So I have seen that shift. And I've also seen a shift in attitudes of firefighters about wanting to work on resilience, whether it's physical resilience or mental health resilience. And, maybe it's just a cultural thing. It's not that anybody was doing things purposely wrong or with, kind of a narrow approach to it. They just didn't know better. And, it's kind of a stoic profession, kind of, macho, and you have to have everything figured out, and you have to be strong enough for everything. And you don't. I mean, it'd be perfect if we could, but real life shows us that, we all need to work on some things. So I think it's been a huge transition into a much better approach to it.
That's awesome. I love to hear that, because I think, in my own personal experience, married to a firefighter and working with firefighters, there's opportunity now to share vulnerabilities.
Yes.
Where before it was so taboo that it makes me look like I'm potentially a weak link here.
Right.
When really it's showing up in bravery, as Brene Brown. I appreciate her work. Yes. Showing up in bravery and saying, hey, I've got some gaps, or I'm struggling, or I'm really having some problems with this, and I want to get better. But in order to get better, I have to first talk about it and be willing to go there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, maybe when some firefighters or even people outside of this profession hear the word vulnerability, they associate it with something that's not so positive. Like you said, it shows weakness, when in reality it doesn't. And if we're really going to not follow the same path that we did many years ago with trying to help our members, we need to look at everything that is included in wellness. And I think if you look at it, if we were to draw it on a dry erase board, it would be interlocking circles. And like Dr. Frost talks about, work, life, play. And it's not just in the context of physical fitness. It's every component of firefighter wellness. So I think taking a more all-inclusive approach is serving our members a lot better.
I appreciate that you call that out, because, as I do seminars for firefighters and talk about nutrition as one pillar inside physical wellness, which is just one component inside this larger spectrum of global wellness. Right. I like the I guess the analogy that it's like it's a spider web. Everything is tangled, and one aspect has correlation across others.
Yep.
So talk to me about some of the work that you've done in terms of firefighter fitness and the concentric circles that maybe that's impacted. Do you have either a personal story or a story that you would be willing to share of how you've seen using fitness as an entry point to improving other aspects of wellness?
Let's see. Lots of examples of that. As far as a personal example that I think made me better equipped to be able to help people was my own journey through getting a total hip replacement. And that happened 3 years ago. And I just kind of wore out the hip joint from lots of stepping in and out of the engine for, at that point, 17 years. And I'm not a tall person, so my body had some wear and tear, and going through that journey of having the surgery, it was kind of scary for me. I felt super vulnerable and kind of exposed, like, ooh, what if I can't do the job? And so I worked really hard to get back to work. But in that process, I started becoming way more aware of other people's journeys and their struggles, and they're feeling a lot of anxiety about coming back to work. So I think then when I would work with firefighters after that experience, I just had a whole new perspective. I no longer could see myself or describe myself or carry myself as this, the person who had never struggled. I really felt like that adversity and that experience that I had made me more effective to help somebody, even if it wasn't somebody who had a hip replacement. Everybody has their struggles. So as far as the fitness part of it, I think that really stands out in my mind as kind of a pivotal point for me. And it wasn't just, am I physically strong enough, or is this person going to be physically strong enough to come back? It's, do you feel okay? Are you emotionally and mentally okay? Do you feel confident and confident? So one of the things that we as a team here at IFD try to do when we are helping firefighters, especially if it's post-op or an injury that took them out of the field for a while, we're not just trying to build their physical capacity. That's a huge part of it, but we're trying to build their mental capacity and their comfort level so that they're not walking back into their firehouse feeling like, ooh, I don't know if I'm ready for this. We want them feeling as ready as possible and as empowered as possible with the information that we shared with them. We don't want it to just, that journey to stop there when they stop working with us. We want to give them the tools where they can just keep going on, and maybe we check back with them in a month and see how things are going, update their program. So it's really kind of a continuous process, ideally.
The journey never stops, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I love that you call that out, because we tend to assume when you sustain a physical injury that the damage only happens in the physical body. But like you called out, there's some psychologicals, there's some emotional pieces of that can really impede progress if they're not addressed. I've seen this with firefighters in my own personal life that I know, that it was the injury that became the catalyst for something bigger. And it's not that they couldn't recover from the injury physically, but there was some damage done to their psychological, their emotional well-being that they just couldn't get past. And so the injury ended up being worse because of some of that psychological, emotional stuff.
Yeah.
Or at least the therapy afterwards took a lot longer, or wasn't completed, and has, unfortunately, a negative impact on their outcome.
And you said it earlier, you can't impact one part of health without touching others. It's kind of a domino effect, and it can be either really good or it can go the other way. So my team we're really committed to making sure that the path that those firefighters travel is the good one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know you and I, when we spoke before getting ready for this interview, that work has shifted a lot, talking about stress amid a global pandemic. That is the stress alone of that, let alone all the changing in protocols, but just the stress alone of that is impacting everyone's work, particularly, firefighters. Can you share with me a little bit of the impact that you personally are experiencing? Like what does that look like for you now?
Well, if you would have asked me that question back in mid-March, late March, my answer would be, and my perspective would be different than it is right now. Not that I think, we're out of the woods, everything's good now. I don't feel that way. But in January, I had been appointed as the IFD Wellness Fitness Coordinator. So brand new to that position. It's a brand new position. Nobody had that before. We already had two great guys already in positions, fitness coordinator and exercise specialist. They had been here for a while, but two more positions had been created, nutrition specialist and then the WFI coordinator. So here I am all excited to come in January and blaze this new trail and join my team. And then all of a sudden, COVID-19 hit. And my boss, the health and safety chief, was also brand new to his position right when COVID hit. So imagine that stress. Yeah. So our heads were just kind of spinning. Well, it became very quickly apparent that he was going to need some help in coming up with a system to basically do call notifications to firefighters if they were potential high-risk exposures to a firefighter who had tested positive for COVID-19.
Okay, and so notifying other firefighters that maybe have worked with an individual.
We could get them tested, and we had to go through specific questions per the CDC guidelines to figure out, are you low risk, are you high risk? And then if they were high risk, then we had other steps that we had to take. Well, that ramped up pretty quickly because not really by any fault of the firefighters, but I think that there was a period of time where I will admit that I almost felt like I was just kind of stunned by what was happening. And, is this really as bad as what people are saying? And things were changing every day. And so it was almost like we were kind of on a delay as far as reacting sometimes in the firehouses, social distancing and all that. And I think that contributed to our numbers initially going up a little bit quicker. And then when everybody became more compliant and they were aware that, yeah, this is a big deal, then the numbers leveled off. But my days and another guy from the team, we would spend our whole day making those phone calls, and it was just mind-boggling, because not only did we feel like we wanted to do our due diligence to be able to answer questions, to be able to ease firefighters' anxiety, but we were also thinking, is this our new job? It was really just kind of overwhelming. And I'll tell you what, I keep thinking about the stress that I felt about not being able to make firefighters feel better, because some of the people that we were talking to had, significant concerns about people who were in their home, that they didn't want to take something home to them, or, what does this mean? How sick am I going to get if I get it? And since we didn't have all the answers, it felt terrible to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that, we got more educated, and I think we figured out a system, and we just got more and more comfortable with talking to these firefighters. And I probably spent too much time sometime on calls just trying to, show some empathy. Some of them were just genuinely scared. And there was one day that really made me feel so good, because, I apologized to this guy. Like I said, I wish I could have answered every question that you had. I'm really sorry that you're going through this. I'm sure it's stressful. And he said, well, your job must be stressful too. He goes, thanks for doing what you're doing. So it was, there would be days where I would feel kind of rewarded like that. But there were also days when I would go home and I would just sit down in silence and think, oh my gosh, I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't know if I want to do this again tomorrow. Is this going to end? Will I ever get to what I'm supposed to be doing? So I was probably, maybe that was a little selfish, but it was a legitimate question that I had, because nobody knew where this was really going to go.
Yeah, I don't want to gloss over this either, because I think you bring up some really valid opportunities to talk about this. Is that, tell me how that was for you personally, because here it sounds like you're calling and notifying and being the quote unquote bearer of bad news. That must have been heavy. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience, and then and even how you coped with that.
Yeah, I think that I fell into the category of having some compassion fatigue. I mean, that's my nature anyway. And I think I carried a lot of that home with me. And that's why I felt the way that I did when I walked in my door, where I wanted no interaction with anybody. And and I thought, oof, this is not good for me, and it's not good for other people. I won't be as resilient to help other people if I don't figure out some way to kind of manage this. And I remember I had skipped workouts for maybe a couple weeks. And for me, working out is, I mean, it's a game changer for me. It will instantly change my attitude, my perspective. I feel so much better. And, you know, that's kind of a no-brainer statement, but I recognized that leaving that part out of my day, because I felt like I had to be at the ready for these phone calls. Oh, we've got another positive firefighter. You need to call these people. And what I realized was getting so uptight about it and being kind of in that fight or flight response mode was wrecking me. And so I decided, okay, the only thing that I can control right now during these crazy times is I can control a part of my day where I can do some self-care. And for me, it's exercise. And I really was doing a pretty good job on nutrition. I know a lot of people feel like they kind of, you know, came off the rails with their eating. That wasn't a big deal for me. It was, I'm not exercising, and that's my medicine. So and they didn't want us using the gym here at headquarters and touching equipment. Well, I decided I already had several pieces of my own equipment, some bands, a TRX, and I would take that equipment. I call it my fitness kit. I have it in a backpack. I have a bottle of water, a towel, and I'd take my music and I would go outside at headquarters and I'd put my TRX around the flagpole. I'd set up my bands, anchor them for whatever I was doing. I would use the open space that we have, and there was nobody else out there really. We had cut way back on staffing here at headquarters, so it wasn't like I was, you know, interacting with people outside. And I would just do a workout and escape for a while. And my boss was wonderful about understanding that I needed that time. If I was going to be helpful to him, which he needed, then he needed to allow me to do that. And he did the same thing. So that was kind of how I managed my stress. But the compassion fatigue, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I imagine so. And, you know, with your experience on the line, I would venture to guess, and what I've witnessed in my own life, particularly with my husband, is that there have been times that he's come home and demonstrated some of that compassion fatigue simply because of the severity of the calls and maybe the volume of calls, but it's not continuous, where it sounds like in this situation, what you described and what you maybe felt in the moment is that, is there any end in sight to this? How am I going to find my new normal amidst this that feels like chaos every day, unpredictability? Which is different than being on the line, I'm sure, because there's still unpredictability there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that, you know, it was, looking back on it, I was very glad that I had come into this new position, you know, before all of the stuff hit with COVID. But I was still thinking about my brothers and sisters out there and worried about them. And yeah, it was kind of weird that the way that I was reconnecting with some of them was through these notification calls. But I think that the plus for them was many of the people that I was calling were people who were familiar with me. So when they heard who it was calling them, it brought down some of the tension. But even if it was a complete stranger, because we're a very large department, I just thought, how would I want somebody to talk to me? If I were getting that phone call, what kind of tone would I want to hear? What kinds of comments would I want to hear? What would comfort me during a call like that?
You have such a passion for what you do, and I just want to thank you for that, first of all, and the care and concern that you put into serving your fire department. in the midst of that, and even since then, I'm sure you've had multiple interactions and conversations just around this global pandemic. What, you shared some of your own personal struggles that you kind of worked through. What were some trends that maybe you heard from firefighters on the line in the station that they were feeling and that they were going through? And how did you talk them through that, or what were they implementing to help cope with that as well?
I think the common denominator that I kept picking up on in the conversations was how are we supposed to be at the firehouse and live our lives doing things that are so counterintuitive to our culture. The fire service is about, it's brotherhood, sisterhood, togetherness. In the firehouse, you may be watching TV together, or you're usually in pretty close proximity. So that kept coming up in phone conversations, and it happened quite a bit early on, when people were still trying to figure out, well, really, do we have to be away from each other? Like, come on, we're at the firehouse. And I think that was probably one of the toughest things. There were some crews here who were eating in different areas of the firehouse instead of coming together during that bonding time. And so I think their perception was we're losing things that we love about being at the firehouse and working out together. And so I think that really struck a chord with a lot of them, and it would with me too. I worked at a firehouse, one of our older firehouses. It's very small, so you can't get too far away from each other. So I think it created a lot of stress because going to work your 24-hour shift is usually, people don't look at it like, oh my God, what's going to happen today, or I think it just changed things so much, and that kind of chipped away at the quality of those 24 hours.
Probably more challenging than many firefighters have ever experienced in their career, because we haven't experienced this before.
Yep.
Yeah, gosh, lots of stress. So amid all of that, I love looking for the silver lining that are in those trying experiences. What's some of the silver lining that you've either witnessed or that you've personally experienced in all of this?
I've seen several things, but one of the things was that I think people's ability to show kindness and compassion and empathy to others kind of came to the surface more, even with complete strangers. I always say that I believe that crisis can either bring out the best in people or the worst in people, and sometimes it's a little bit of both. But I saw both of those extremes, but it really was noticeable to me when I saw the acts of kindness and people offering to give extra PPE that they had to a friend or a neighbor, or let me go grocery shopping for you. I know you're in a high-risk group, things like that. And even just people waving to me. And I don't know if it's because they saw my fire department vehicle and, they were wanting to wave to a first responder, but I think it was more, oh my gosh, there's people. And it was when you start to see more people going out, just taking walks, getting out of the house and still doing their social distancing. But it was that, I think, some kind of human connection with somebody else, even if you didn't have a conversation, just a wave, like, hope you're doing okay. Yeah. I noticed that. It was really nice.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I think, we're still kind of in this transition where I'm at in Idaho. We were making progress forward, and now we've taken a step back because we've seen a rise in incidences. I think everybody has wrapped their brain around that. This isn't going anywhere. Right. So in your expert opinion, what would you suggest to other firefighters and even their families kind of moving forward through the rest of 2020 to hold space and maybe try implementing something that helps them manage what is still unknown to come, to protect their personal wellness and their resilience? What would you recommend for them?
Well, that's a loaded question. It's a great
And
question.
it doesn't have to be all the things. It can just be like, hey, these are a couple big dial movers.
I think, and this goes back to my realization of what was kind of starting to unravel with me early on, where I wasn't doing self-care things that mattered to me, made me feel better and a little more resilient. I think that families need to have honest conversations about, okay, this, we could get another wave of this. We made it through the first one. Here's what we learned from it. I love you, but I don't necessarily want to be around you all the time. Maybe I take a walk at some point. I think everybody needs to identify what it is that will kind of make them feel more whole and kind of healed from some of the stress that they're enduring. Because it's, when you think about what we've gone through recently, it wasn't just a one-time stress. It was repeated bouts. You might feel like, whew, I made it through this week. Okay, this coming week it's going to be better. I'm sure it's going to be better. And then you get knocked down again. So it's that accumulation of stress over and over again, kind of like a concussion. And that can do a lot of damage to your mind, to your body. So I think just if families have open communication about what's going to help them, the next time this comes around. And gosh, having kids, I don't have kids, but I was thinking about, wow, this is a whole different world for parents, because not only are they potentially working from home and needing to focus, but they're also needing to help their kids. Their kids are around all the time. Talk about needing resilience. I feel for
Let me just say, I've been earning my paycheck as a mother. That is for sure.
And you interviewed Alex Clark from the PFT instructor group, and you said something about the stories we tell ourselves. That really resonated with me, because that will determine how you respond to stresses. If I keep telling myself, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed, and this is not going to be better, and I don't have time for working out. If that's my story, then the story is not going to end well. So my story needs to be one that has multiple chapters and they all end well. And even if I'm faced with stresses and obstacles, I'm hoping that I have enough resilience that I can make it to the next chapter.
That's a good call out. It's just shifting that thinking that the glass isn't half empty, it's half full. I mean, the quantity is still the same, regardless of, the glass is still half, but is it half full or half empty? I like that you brought that up, because even just, my husband got off shift just a couple days ago, and I've noticed his ability to recover post tour is a little bit delayed now. And I think it's because of that buildup of stress. And we even had our own little interaction that he was exhausted and he wanted to check out. I'm like, babe, why don't you come out here and hang out with me while I make dinner? And I appreciate that we've had, through this process, we've had some hard, honest, real conversations. And in that moment, he was able to say, look, I feel like you have this expectation of me to be here and present with you and to be able to have a conversation. I can't. I literally just need to close the door in our bedroom and have some quiet time. So as much as I want to be with you and hang out with you, I don't have the capacity, and it has nothing to do with you. And it was good that he called that out, because I had written a story in my head like, oh, but I've missed you. I haven't seen you.
You start going down the rabbit hole mentally about, well, why is he saying it? Or why is he acting that way? And I mean, it's just such an unprecedented time for people to manage this kind of thing, because we almost are responding on the fly. We're figuring out a lot of things as we go along, and we're going to fumble. Same with me. I wish I could say, I have it all figured out and here's what you should do. And I've never struggled at all during this time or any other time in my life. And I don't know. It's just not realistic. And I think that, as we talked about before, I think being relatable and being somebody who others can look to as the person who doesn't necessarily have it all figured out. They have gone through adversity, they've fumbled around, they've figured some things out, they're going to make more mistakes. That's the kind of person I want to talk to. I don't want the flawless, never make a mistake, does everything perfectly. That's a little overwhelming to me, and it usually brings out insecurities in me. So I just have a very different kind of delivery style now versus maybe 15 years ago when I was teaching. I usually tell my students, I'm probably not going to have every answer to a question you have. Some of you may stump me. I'm not going to make something up, but I'll get the answer to you. I also tell them I learn from students every time I teach. I mean, we get some phenomenal students in the PFT class. It's fun. It feels like I'm back in school because some of them have subject matter expertise that maybe I don't have. So we kind of pool our information. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I would love to dive a little bit more into that because, yes, maybe the severity of responding to a global pandemic has subsided just a little bit, but again, kind of knowing that it's not going anywhere. Talk to me about your work that you're doing as a wellness fitness coordinator and what that looks like for Indianapolis and the firefighters that you're serving there. How are you guys pivoting?
Well, I recently, within the last few weeks, kind of transitioned away from all the COVID related work that I was doing and could get back into kind of creating the template for what my job position is. I mean, I kind of have some general ideas based on conversations that I had with my team, with my boss, but we all kind of wear several hats. There's 4 of us, and some of our job responsibilities overlap, such as doing recruit fitness training. We have a class right now going on. They graduate in August. So that's a big part of our mornings, very early morning. And then we have lots of other things we do. There's, we work with firefighters who are maybe going back to work after an injury, surgery. We have this amazing line of duty injury clinic here. It's Protein Tactical Performance. We have 2 very seasoned athletic trainers, just phenomenal experience and wisdom and insight that they bring. And they not only are taking care of our injured firefighters who are injured in the line of duty, but they're so, they have bought in so much, and they're so motivated to understand our culture, understand our orthopedic challenges, understand our mechanisms of injuries. So they get involved in all the training that the recruits are doing. So they're throwing ladders, they're doing all of that stuff, wearing gear, so they have just a fantastic understanding of what it feels like, So I think it's, it's one thing for them to see an injured firefighter who comes in and says, well, I injured my shoulder putting this ladder up, or I injured my lower back. They understand it, but when they actually put gear on and do those movements, it just, I think it kind of fills in any of the blanks that might have been there without that experience. So I'm so excited about them. They've been here for a year. We're moving into a brand new IFD Health and Wellness Center this summer. So it will be, awesome. It goes back to that all-encompassing, comprehensive wellness approach. We'll have our peer support coordinator here at the facility, Brandon Dryman. We'll have all 4 of us from fitness. We will have Protein Tactical Performance. So it will be, it's funny because if you would have told me 5 years ago, Sue, IFD is going to have this amazing wellness center, and guess what? You're going to hold one of the positions at that facility. I would have bet my pension that it would never happen. First of all, never thought I would come into admin, and I never thought we would have a facility like that. But there have been so many steps taken and so much incredibly tough work done by amazing people in admin to get those things in motion, that once I saw what was happening, it completely changed my mind about, well, maybe I might go into admin. Maybe I can, preserve my body a little bit longer in my career and do something that is in my wheelhouse and do something that I'm absolutely passionate about.
That's so exciting. And I imagine that the firefighters that watch this will think, that sounds incredible. I would love even just a small sliver of that. So
Yeah.
maybe for someone who is passionate about health and wellness or is a PFT, it sounds like it was a pretty long road to get to this point. What would you recommend for them just to even get the conversation started about exploring, including wellness and fitness into the culture and into the fire service that they're experiencing?
That's a great question. That comes up a lot in the classes that I've taught for the IAFF. There are firefighters who are sent to those classes with this kind of daunting task of, somebody from admin said, all right, you're going to this class and you're going to put together a wellness program for our department. Well, that's a big animal. And it can be so overwhelming when they start learning what the components of the WFI are, that it kind of discourages them and it kind of sidelines them, and they almost get, it's kind of like paralysis by analysis. They just think, oh, that's way too much. And plus, I'm one person. I can't do all of that.
Yeah. It's a hell of a whale that you're trying to eat.
Yeah. So we address that because, even though I come from a department that has maybe a lot more resources than other departments, we realize that that's just not typical. And so we like to have options or suggestions for firefighters to say, hey, you don't have to have everything in place. And this goes back to Dr. Frost, small steps to big change. You don't have to have all the answers, all of the equipment, medical evaluations, all that. I would say that would be the first recommendation, is a medical evaluation, especially for older firefighters. But if we're just talking about very realistic, financially realistic things that departments could do, I would say get some people from your department certified as PFTs, get somebody trained in peer support, because those two things kind of marry up against each other. I wouldn't recommend one without the other if all possible, because one thing affects the other. And we give, in the PFT course, we give resources, pre-made programs from Dr. Frost that are so manageable, so doable for anybody. You wouldn't even have to have equipment. You just have to have kind of a, I would say, an all-in attitude and think outside the box. And, one of the things that this ties back to COVID, you had asked about how it had impacted me. I think that it forced me to think outside the box a lot more than I thought I was capable of. And I think through that adversity, it made a lot of people grow in different ways, but certainly in the arena of fitness, people had to get creative. So fitness doesn't always look like what you think it would look like, and taking care of yourself can look completely different, especially during a time of crisis, than what you would think. But I think it challenged people in a really, really good way. Once they kind of wrap their minds around, oh my God, my gym is closed indefinitely. What do I do now? Well, you've got the internet, you've got plenty of resources to do some things to still stay on track.
Yeah, I think it facilitated opportunity for people to, exactly like you said, get creative, but also be realistic. That's one of the things that I butt up against a lot with nutrition is, oh my gosh, I have to clean out my entire fridge and my entire pantry, and I can't eat anything except for celery and kale. Like, okay, is that realistic?
God, it sounds awful, Lisa.
It does sound awful. But in terms of fitness and in terms of self-care, what is realistic? What's just that one next step? I like to refer that as the lead domino. I don't know if you've ever read The One Thing, but it's back there on my bookshelf. just what's that lead domino? And maybe it is a 30-minute workout on your lunch break. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk with your dog. Maybe it's just coming home from shift and staying in your car for 10 minutes and doing some breathing and, you know, listening to some music. Just what's realistic for you in order to be able to show up as your most capable self right now in this moment. So I think those are great call outs.
Yeah.
So you are doing some incredible work, and you're a great resource, not just for the IAFF and for the PFTs, but for firefighters across the country. So if someone wanted to reach out to you, just kind of pick your brain, because they're passionate and they want to learn more about how to recreate what you've done there, how would someone reach out to you? What's the best way?
Probably my department email, which is susan.shepherd, SHEPHERD @indy.gov.
Okay, we'll make sure that we include that in the notes. Any other ways? I know you're active inside this, inside our Facebook group, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm on
Awesome.
Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and yeah, they can reach me by email, and I may not get back to them right away. We're kind of in a crazy time right here with getting moved into the new facility, but I promise I will do my best to answer questions as they come in.
Awesome. Awesome. Any last thoughts that you want to leave with, knowing the group that we have? It's, gosh, I think it's over 1,200 people now, a lot of firefighters, but also some family members as well. Any last thoughts that you'd want to leave them with before we sign off?
Well, first, I just want to say that this platform, I think, has made a difference for a lot of people. Obviously, if you have that many people who have joined, people are looking for any kind of resources that can help them not only feel like they're, you know, barely keeping their head above water. We want to feel like we're going beyond just surviving this crazy time. So I don't know. I just think keep doing what you're doing. And I think we should all just reach out to each other as far as, you know, looking for ideas and, you know, just recognize that we're probably going to go through some more tough times. But what we've been through over the last few months, I think whether people realize it or not, it did build some resilience in them. And I think that's a good foundation to build from. And yeah, that's my recommendation.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll make sure that I include your email in the post that we have included here. And then, of course, you can always tag Sue in this group if you have a question specific for you. So Sue, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. I value your passion and your expertise, and just thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, take care.
All right, you too.